Despite how terrible I am at them, I've always loved the Mario Tennis games. Aces in particular resonated with me as it activates the same part of my brain that makes me love fighting games so much. So when I sat down at a recent preview event to go hands-on with Mario Tennis Fever, I was especially interested to see whether this iteration would scratch that same itch. The demo I had the opportunity to try out was limited to multiplayer, meaning we didn't get to see any of the adventure mode content. Instead, Nintendo paired me off against another attendee in a 1v1 match before having us play doubles. Before we started our matches, we were asked to spin a wheel Nintendo had set up in the event space to determine which Fever racket we would use. Each Fever racket has its own special effect, which once a meter is filled enables a Fever shot which imparts that effect. For example, the Mud racket leaves a patch of mud on the court wherever it lands, but I'll talk more about that in just a sec. When I spun the wheel, I landed on the Bullet Bill racket, and a Nintendo representative stepped in to ask me not to use it, offering the explanation that it was a little overpowered. They asked me to switch instead to the Mud racket, which I did. After a short tutorial to explain the basics, I was paired up against an opponent for singles. I chose Diddy Kong despite preferring power players and equipped my Mud racket. To say I was trounced is an understatement, but I did learn from my experience. The Fever shot mechanic is interesting and adds a layer of complexity that I didn't expect. Landing a mud shot on the court left an area where both players and balls move more slowly, leading to better opportunities to score if my opponent's timing wasn't perfect. But it also opened up the opportunity to play mind games. My opponent would likely expect me to shoot in that area. So what if I angle my shots as far away from that as possible, hoping they anticipated the wrong move? I was beginning to grasp the beauty of this idea, but my singles match ended too quickly for me to get it. Next, we were paired up for doubles. I got teamed up with Kinda Funny's Blessing Adeoye Jr., and we were told that this time, the gloves were off. So I did what I was born to do. I picked the Bullet Bill racket, ready to sow chaos and frustrate my opponents. I let the Nintendo rep know I was going to do it and asked him if they planned to nerf the Bullet Bill racket before launch. He said no, and immediately warned the enemy team that I was setting out to ruin their day. This was going to be good. Or at least, so I thought. This time I picked DK so I could see his new design's debut in a Mario Tennis game, and Blessing went with Baby Wario in a sort of bizarro bonanza setup. Blessing had the Thwomp racket, and we got to work. I'm not gonna lie, at first, it was rough. We were getting scored on mercilessly by the other team. It felt like karmic retribution for my evil doings, but around the fourth unanswered point, it finally happened. My fever gauge was full. After an intense volley that included 2 other fever shots, I fired back with the Bullet Bill racket and hit Pauline with the ball, scoring our first point and taking some of her HP. It was such a diabolical move that I couldn't help but laugh out loud. After that, Blessing and I began dismantling the opposition. He started putting thwomps in the way of their shots with his thwomp racket, and I kept firing bullet bills at impossible speeds into corners and sometimes directly at our enemies, until we came back to win the match. It was the most fun I've had in a Mario Tennis game to date, and it showed me just how much the Fever mechanic adds to the game. After we wrapped up our doubles, Nintendo let us play a Wonder match in which Wonder effects happen during the actual tennis match. It's still too early to tell how much longevity Mario Tennis Fever will have for me. I still want to know more about its single-player prospects, particularly around adventure mode. But if the multiplayer is any indication, we're going to be in for a good time when the game drops later this month. At Nintendo's recent preview event in New York, I had the opportunity to check out Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Meetup in Bellabel Park, or more specifically, I had the opportunity to check out Meetup in Bellabel Park. Wonder received the standard Switch 2 Edition treatment, increased resolution, sharper details, basically what we've collectively come to expect from the Switch 2 Edition label. The real interesting bit here is Meetup in Bellabel Park with its new multiplayer attractions and the addition of Rosalina to the roster. To start things off, Nintendo had a group of 4 attendees play a game called Build-A-Way Donut Block Maker. This one was basically New Super Mario Bros. U, except 2 players used mouse controls while 2 platformed. In New Super Mario Bros. U, the player with the gamepad could use the touchscreen to create platforms. Replace the touchscreen with a mouse mode Joy-Con and the platforms with donut blocks, and you'll get the idea. At first, it felt a bit simplistic. A well-coordinated team could run through this in a breeze. But it got more complicated when we found a collectible we wanted to get that was surrounded on all sides by breakable boxes with a single spike throwing projectiles. The builders and the players had to work together to create a path for the ball to reach the boxes. And our first attempts failed spectacularly. The builders were laying too many donuts, and the players were falling into too many pits. Once we figured out how to get the enemy to work with us, we made short work of the challenge though, and it was on to the next game. Our next challenge was a co-op experience called Lockout Bomb Relay. This one was essentially a game of hot potato, where a talking flower would call out to specific characters to take the bomb and run with it. At the top of the screen is a 30-second timer, and whenever the bomb isn't in the hands of the right character, that timer will tick down. This one was a straightforward affair, outside of having to pass the bomb to the right person, and at the end, you load it into a cannon and watch it explode. Even as uncoordinated as we were, we managed to get our bomb to the goal with time to spare, but there was a fun sense of anxiety to watching the timer get lower and lower, wondering if we were going to make it out. For me, the best part of our demo were the competitive portions. We played a total of 3 competitive games. Our first was called Baby Yoshi's Feeding Time, in which every player has a baby Yoshi in their hands and has to feed it as much as possible while traversing an auto-scrolling level. Throughout the level, you'll find fruits and enemies you can eat, though you can't just gobble things up indiscriminately. Some poisonous items are mixed in with the good stuff, and at the end of the attraction, Kamek flew in and tossed tons of items to Mario Party the results up a bit, adding a random element that meant that even if you were not in the lead, you still had a chance no matter where you were. To top all that off, the more you fed your Yoshi, the heavier it got, making you unable to go as fast. So if you loaded up too much in the beginning, you might set yourself up for failure later. I really liked it. We also played a standout game in Zap Frenzy, which felt like a Mario-style take on Bomberman, with each player trying to take the others out using lightning rods. A coin collecting game in which you need to collect as many as possible while avoiding King Boo's stare, an aerial race in which we rode flowers, and an almost Monkey Ball-inspired game in which we bounced through levels. Individually, each of these seem fun, though I'm concerned that the totality of them may feel underwhelming. Unfortunately, we weren't able to explore any of Bellabel Park outside of the attractions we played. For me, that's where the real fun is likely to be. I desperately wanted to see the Toad Brigade camp, battle the Koopalings, and gather new Wonder Seeds, but sadly none of those were parts of the demo we played. We'll just have to wait until the game releases, but considering Mario Wonder is one of the best 2D Mario games of all time, and we're getting more of that, I think it's safe to believe that Bellabel Park will offer something of value when it comes out on March 26th. Nintendo recently invited me to a Switch 2 preview event featuring a handful of upcoming games, and among them, one of the marquee attractions was the upcoming Virtual Boy NSO app with its accompanying headset. Nintendo is debuting 2 flavors of the Virtual Boy headset alongside the addition to their subscription service later this month. A cardboard one not too dissimilar from the Labo VR headset from 2019, and a fancier plastic version meant to better replicate the look and feel of the failed 90s device. Nintendo let me test drive the more expensive plastic version of the Virtual Boy replica, which will come in at $100 here in the US when it launches, rather than the more affordable cardboard version, which is set at around $25. It's worth noting that to play Virtual Boy games, even if you have the appropriate Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you will have to buy one of these. Nintendo confirmed to me at the preview event that there is no way to play these without a headset, meaning docked or handheld play in 2D is not an option. That's truly disappointing considering some of these games are fantastic and would enjoy an even broader appeal if players had the choice to play them without the 3D effects. Before I get into the games, let's talk a little bit about the plastic version of the Virtual Boy headset itself. Unlike the original hardware, the Switch 2's Virtual Boy is just a shell. While indentations for the original buttons are present, none of them serve any purpose. Think of the Switch 2 Virtual Boy headset as a fancy Labo VR headset, and you're going to be on the right track. Speaking of which, Nintendo did confirm to me that you can use the Virtual Boy headsets to play any Switch VR games, like Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey's VR modes, on your Switch 2, which is super neat. The focus, of course, wasn't on the Virtual Boy hardware or the previous Switch VR games, but on the Virtual Boy titles themselves. Nintendo let us try out the entire launch lineup: Galactic Pinball, 3D Tetris, Tolero Boxer, Virtual Boy Wario Land, The Mansion of Innsmouth, Golf, and Red Alarm. Nintendo let me jump right in and select what I wanted to play without restrictions. When I started, I noticed that the image was a bit out of focus for me, and the Nintendo rep on hand walked me through going to settings and changing the IPD, or interpupillary distance, of the app to help line up the image better with my eyes, which was a massive help. In most VR headsets, this is done in hardware with a knob or a dial, but since there are no moving parts in the Virtual Boy headsets, this is done instead in software. And I have to say, it works remarkably well. Once I had the IPD dialed in, I was greeted to a nice 3D effect that didn't feel straining on my eyes. The NSO menu itself had a nice subtle depth to it, with the left-hand side menu sitting over the top of the box art for each game. It was a cool effect that made me feel as though I was using an actual Virtual Boy. Once I hopped into a game, I was impressed with just how some of these long-forgotten titles look. They're undoubtedly running at a higher resolution than the originals. Lines were crisp and clear, and there was no flicker or anything distracting. At preview time, we were only able to play in the original red hue, as Nintendo is planning to release an update later on to allow players to change colors to Virtual Boy games. Each had a subtle but convincing 3D effect. And for the brief time I leaned into the headset, it felt comfortable. Wario Land is considered one of the best games on the platform, but in a short demo, I was most impressed by Tolero Boxer, as it showed off the 3D effect with both Boxer's hands zooming in and out of the screen in a believable way. While items that pop out of the screen on the 3DS often cause me eye strain, I didn't feel that while playing the Virtual Boy. I never had the opportunity to play these on the original hardware, so this was my first time seeing these games. As such, it's difficult for me to pin down how accurate they are. But as someone who has long wondered about this often forgotten chapter in Nintendo's history, I'm thrilled to see these games made accessible in a way that portrays their original design intentions. That said, I'd love to see these titles available to players who would prefer to play in 2D, and I hope that Nintendo eventually provides an update to allow that, but this is ironically one of Nintendo's upcoming releases I'm most excited about, and after playing it myself, that excitement has only heightened.